He didn't rise, didn't blink, didn't even pretend to acknowledge the judge who had just entered the courtroom. Instead, he adjusted his gold cufflinks, leaned back in the defense chair, and smirked like he owned the entire building. And maybe he did, because when your name is plastered across half the skyscrapers in the city, when your private jet has its own staff of sommeliers, when your lawyer charges 5 figures an hour just to breathe in your direction, you don't follow rules. You write them. At least, that's what Walter Grant believed, as he sat arrogantly in courtroom 3A of the Fulton County Superior Court, waiting for what he assumed would be nothing more than a routine slap on the wrist. He was a billionaire, a power broker, a real estate tycoon with more senators in his back pocket than most political parties. And today, he was facing allegations of land theft, environmental violations, and perjury, all stemming from a controversial development project that had bulldozed its way through several low-income neighborhoods in Atlanta. But if Walter was nervous, he didn't show it. He glanced briefly at the media gallery packed with reporters. Let them gawk, he thought. This court is just another stage, and I am the star. Then the courtroom doors opened, and silence fell. She walked in, tall, composed, black robe flowing like armor. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, steady, deliberate, until she reached the bench and sat. Judge Naomi Prescott, a name that, until today, Walter had only seen mentioned in reports. Reports he didn't bother to read. She was young, too young, he thought, and black. His smirk widened. This'll be fun. The bailiff called the court to order. All rose, except one. Prescott didn't miss a beat. She opened her file, paused, then slowly looked up. Her eyes met Walter's, and for the briefest moment, something passed between them. Not recognition, not intimidation, something colder, sharper. It wasn't the look of someone offended by arrogance. It was the look of someone who had spent their entire career dismantling it. And in that moment, just that brief flicker of silence, the power in the room shifted. Even if Walter Grant didn't know it yet, because this wasn't going to be the performance he thought it would be. This time, the courtroom didn't belong to him. Walter Grant didn't just break the law, he buried it under layers of contracts, shell companies, and political favors bought with champagne brunches and backroom checks. What brought him to court today wasn't just a zoning dispute. It was the aftermath of 3 years of quiet devastation. In the heart of Southwest Atlanta, there used to be a community called Baytree Hills, a patch of modest homes, corner stores, and a church with cracked steps and golden morning light. It wasn't pretty, but it was home, until Walter decided he wanted it. He'd bought one lot first, then another, then 20, through silent proxies and cash offers that preyed on fear and economic desperation. When a few families refused to sell, he sent inspectors to harass them. When that didn't work, the demolition trucks arrived anyway, under permits approved by a city official who mysteriously resigned 2 weeks later. The land was leveled, the trees were gone, the families scattered, and in their place, a concrete skeleton of luxury condos advertised as exclusive sanctuaries above the noise. It was business. To Walter, that meant no consequences. He'd done this before. In Miami, in DC. Each time the lawsuits quietly vanished. But this time was different. This time, a legal intern named Andre Watts, fresh out of Howard Law, had been documenting everything. Emails, fake addresses, conflicting permit dates, even a memo from Walter's assistant bragging, "Prescott won't be a problem. She's ambitious, not suicidal." Andre had handed the file to the one judge in Fulton County known for not backing down. Naomi Prescott, a former civil rights attorney, daughter of a teacher and a sanitation worker, and the only judge in recent memory to have sanctioned a sitting city council member. On live TV, for witness tampering. She didn't care about Walter's money. She didn't care about the headlines. And she didn't forget Baytree Hills, because she grew up 10 minutes from it. So when Walter walked into that courtroom expecting the usual, she was already waiting. Her courtroom wasn't a stage. It was a battlefield. And today, the mask of polite lawyering was coming off. No more redacted files. No more private settlements. She was going to drag every lie into the light. And Walter, he was about to find out the difference between owning a courtroom and facing justice inside one. When Judge Naomi Prescott stepped into her courtroom that morning, the air changed. Not because of who she was, but because of who was already seated. Walter Grant, the billionaire behind 6 unfinished high-rises, a dozen evictions, and 1 anonymous donation to the city's legal fund that conveniently arrived the same day his last lawsuit disappeared. He sat there in a gray Tom Ford suit, legs crossed like he was hosting a press conference. No notebook, no laptop, not even his lawyer by his side yet. Just him, relaxed, like he already owned the verdict. Judge Prescott didn't flinch. She adjusted her robe, gave a subtle nod to the clerk, and began. Court is now in session. Walter didn't stand. The room noticed. Whispers, eyes shifting. His legal team, 3 top-tier attorneys in tailored suits, rushed to make it seem normal. They stood. One even forced a slight cough like Walter had missed the cue. Prescott saw through it. She didn't scold him, didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, she turned to the first item on the docket. A motion Walter had filed to dismiss the case before it even began. A 42-page argument claiming that the community lacked legal standing to challenge his development because most residents had relocated voluntarily. Voluntarily? A mother had gone into early labor because of jackhammers outside her home at 5 a.m. A retired vet's home had been bulldozed with his garden still intact. Prescott flipped through the motion in silence, then looked up. "Mr. Grant," she said, her voice smooth but heavy with steel. He smiled. "I assume you're referring to Mr. Grant's legal counsel," one of his lawyers interjected, standing quickly. "I wasn't," she replied flatly. The courtroom froze. "You filed this motion under your own name. You appended a personal affidavit. You claimed, and I quote, 'No harm was done.'" She leaned forward slightly. "So tell me, is that still your position?" For the first time, Walter shifted, just a bit. The kind of micro-movement people make when they realize they've misjudged the terrain. "Yes, Your Honor," he said carefully. "I stand by every word." "Good," Prescott said. "Because this courtroom stands by the law, and today we will let the evidence speak." She denied his motion without a pause. His attorneys objected. She overruled them. They tried to delay. She refused. And when they claimed there were pending settlements that made the trial unnecessary, she simply raised one eyebrow. "This isn't a negotiation," she said. "It's a reckoning." For the first time, Walter's fingers curled against the wood of the table. The courtroom, packed with residents, journalists, and law students who had waited months to see this case, fell into a dense, waiting silence. The system had always protected men like Walter, but this time, it had teeth. It started simple. A witness, a statement, a question. But in Judge Naomi Prescott's courtroom, nothing stayed simple for long. Walter Grant's legal team called their first witness, Martin Kessler, the city zoning official who had mysteriously signed off on the construction permits. Just 2 days after receiving a consulting grant from one of Grant's shell companies, Kessler took the stand with a rehearsed smile, his suit too crisp, his voice too smooth. "Mr. Kessler," Prescott said, You're here to clarify whether Mr. Grant's development followed proper legal protocols? Correct, Your Honor. But as the attorney questioned him, something shifted. The facts didn't add up. He mentioned documents Prescott had never seen, dates that conflicted with the city's own records, timelines that seemed massaged. Then came the mistake. Walter leaned forward, smirked, and whispered something to his attorney, loud enough for one of the court recorders to pick up. She doesn't know what she's doing. Prescott paused. She didn't look up, didn't react. Instead, she turned to the recorder. Could you repeat the last off-record comment, please? The courtroom froze. A moment passed. Then the clerk, pale-faced, read it back word for word. She doesn't know what she's doing. Prescott folded her hands, looked directly at Walter for the first time. I assure you, Mr. Grant, I know exactly what I'm doing. Her voice was calm, even, but the heat beneath it, undeniable. She leaned back, eyes scanning the room. Let the record show. Any further attempts to intimidate, insult, or interfere with these proceedings, from the plaintiff, the defense, or their representatives, will result in immediate contempt of court. Walter tried to interject. Your Honor, don't. Just that word. Firm, final. The entire room tilted. Even his lawyers backed away slightly. That was the first time the smirk vanished. The first time a billionaire who thought he owned the room was reminded that it wasn't his. It belonged to the law, and to the woman wielding it like a blade. Prescott turned back to the witness. Now, Mr. Kessler, she said, I'd like you to explain why the signature on this permit. She held it up. Matches neither your city ID nor your notarized forms. Kessler blinked, stammered. The courtroom held its breath. I can't say for sure, Your Honor. She raised one eyebrow. Then I'll say it for you. It's fraudulent, and this court will treat it as such. The attorney tried to object. Overruled. Kessler's face turned pale. Walter leaned back, visibly rattled now, because that was just the first round, and he'd already taken a hit. The courtroom had seen arrogance before, but what happened next? It saw a reckoning. After the dramatic unraveling of Kessler's testimony, Judge Prescott called for a short recess, but Walter Grant didn't leave his seat. He stayed, tapping his fingers against the mahogany table like nothing had changed, like he still controlled the air in the room. But someone else had come prepared. From the defense table, Attorney Malik Rose stood. He wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, but he carried a folder, and inside that folder was a ticking bomb. As the court reconvened, Rose stepped forward. Your Honor, he began. The defense would like to introduce new documentation, recently obtained, that directly contradicts the testimony of Mr. Martin Kessler. Prescott raised an eyebrow. You may proceed. Rowe walked to the evidence projector, placing a set of documents under the lens. The screen flickered, then displayed a scanned image of the original property survey from 1991, a notarized letter from a retired city engineer, and finally, a time-stamped internal memo from the city clerk's office, stating that the approval for Grant's project had been manually inserted into the zoning database 2 weeks after the deadline had passed. Gasps echoed. Whispers rippled through the benches. Judge Prescott leaned forward, her voice cutting through the noise. Mr. Grant, were you aware of this modification? Walter stood, adjusting his tie with exaggerated patience. I believe that's a misinterpretation of internal protocol. Rowe didn't miss a beat. With all due respect, Your Honor, the internal protocol Mr. Grant refers to appears to have been a backdoor change, made by a clerk who no longer works for the city, who also received a $40,000 payment through a consulting firm linked to Grant Holdings, LLC. He paused. Let it settle. This is not a mistake. It's a deliberate falsification. For the first time, Walter Grant's face cracked. He turned to his lawyers, but they offered no salvation. The judge folded her arms. "Is there any explanation you'd like to offer the court?" Walter opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence. A billionaire, cornered not by power but by paper. Rowe returned to his seat as the murmurs grew louder. Reporters typed furiously. Court sketch artists captured every flicker of emotion. Prescott struck her gavel once. "Order." She turned to Grant again. "This court is no longer questioning whether misconduct occurred. The evidence is clear." Her voice was razor sharp now. "We are now considering what consequences will follow." Walter sat down slowly. His empire had been built on silence, settlements, and smiles. But today, the documents spoke louder than his money ever could, and the courtroom listened. Walter Grant didn't become a billionaire by folding under pressure. So when Judge Prescott declared the evidence undeniably compromising, he didn't beg. He retaliated. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "I request a motion to dismiss all new evidence on grounds of unlawful acquisition. My legal team had no prior notice, and this violates discovery protocol." The courtroom tensed. It was his last card. Prescott narrowed her eyes. "You're suggesting the defense fabricated these documents?" Grant smiled, confident again. "I'm suggesting the court was manipulated. We both know surprises are dangerous in the wrong hands." But Malik Rowe stood just as calmly. "No surprises, Your Honor. All evidence was gathered legally, and we're prepared to call our final witness to verify its chain of custody." The door opened, and in walked someone no one expected. A former project manager at Grant Holdings, a man named Benjamin Tate. He looked nervous, but as he was sworn in, his voice rang steady. I was part of the zoning approval process for Grant's development in Redwood Park. I was told to bypass code checks and submit modified documents to city planning under a rush order. I have the emails." He held up a thumb drive. A collective exhale filled the room. Grant's attorney jumped up, yelling, "Objection! This is hearsay! He was terminated 2 years ago!" Rowe turned. "And yet he still has access to the internal logs, which were never subpoenaed. Because your team conveniently left them out of your own discovery requests." He turned to Judge Prescott. "We now have 3 sources confirming illegal property encroachment, falsified city permits, and bribery of public officials. We rest our case." Prescott nodded, then faced Grant. "Mr. Grant, do you wish to rebut?" Walter didn't stand this time. He didn't even speak. He just stared, jaw tight, shoulders heavy. The man who once owned judges, councilmen, even city blocks, now sat beneath the weight of a courtroom he couldn't bend. Judge Prescott rose from her bench, her voice calm, but final. "This court will recess until tomorrow for a formal ruling. But let me be clear. The credibility of this court has been insulted, and I have no tolerance for those who twist justice with wealth." She struck the gavel. One sharp bang, echoing like thunder. And just like that, Walter Grant's final move collapsed beneath him. As he stood to leave, someone from the gallery shouted, "How's it feel, Walter, to lose something money can't buy?" He didn't turn. He didn't smile, because for the first time, he understood. Some courts still belong to justice, not power. The next morning, the air in the courtroom buzzed with a different kind of electricity. Gone were the chuckles, the arrogance, the smirks. In their place, silence, tension, and the faint rustle of jurors filing in with solemn expressions. Malik Rowe sat with his hands folded, calm, poised. Behind him, several small business owners, people whose properties had once been threatened by Grant's empire, sat shoulder to shoulder in support. And across the aisle, Walter Grant no longer looked like a billionaire. His suit still cost more than most people's monthly income. But his eyes, bloodshot, restless, revealed something money couldn't conceal. Fear. Judge Prescott entered without ceremony, adjusted her glasses, and spoke. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" A juror stood. "We have, Your Honor." The clerk retrieved the envelope, hands trembling slightly. Prescott read in silence, then looked up. "In the matter of Roe versus Grant Holdings, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff." Gasps, then tears. Grant's jaw tightened. He didn't flinch, but he looked away, toward a window, as if searching for a way out that no longer existed. Prescott continued. "The court also recommends immediate review by the district attorney regarding criminal violations exposed during this trial." Then she turned to Malik. "Mr. Rowe, you defended your rights with courage, and in doing so, you've protected the integrity of this court." She banged the gavel once more, but even as applause broke out, Malik didn't smile. Because justice, real justice, isn't euphoric. It's heavy. It costs something. Later, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Rowe, how does it feel to take down a billionaire?" He paused, then answered, "This wasn't about taking someone down. It was about standing up for people who never thought they had a voice. I just hope they see now. We do." Behind him, Grant exited the building, surrounded by his legal team. But the crowd didn't part like it used to. No more awe, no deference, just cameras, and silence, and something even worse, indifference. Back inside the emptying courtroom, Malik lingered. He looked at the bench, the jury box, the walls that once threatened to collapse on him. He'd won, but the stress had carved something out of him. Something he might not get back. He exhaled, long and deep, then whispered, "This wasn't the end." Because he knew power never dies easily. And justice? It always demands a price. The headlines would fade. The trending hashtags would cycle out in a week. But what Malik Rowe did inside that courtroom would remain etched in memory far longer. Not because he won a lawsuit against a billionaire, but because he reminded the world that power doesn't always sit on the bench or behind a checkbook. Sometimes it walks in wearing old shoes, carrying a manila folder, and standing alone. Weeks later, local news stations followed up with stories about zoning reforms, about pending investigations into Grant Holdings, about business owners reclaiming their land. But those were just ripples. The real impact? It was quieter, more human. A janitor at the courthouse who'd watched the entire trial told his daughter, "You see? Even people like us can stand up." A single mother in East Oakland filed a complaint against her slumlord for the first time. A high school debate team in Alabama used Malik's cross-examination as a case study in courage. This story didn't end with applause. It started a ripple of awakenings, but Malik paid for it. The stress, the threats, the smearing, the nights wondering if it would be worth it. And yet, he never flinched, because justice is never comfortable. It's never polite. And it rarely comes without sacrifice. So the question is, would you have done what Malik did? Would you stand up in a room designed to silence you? Would you risk everything just to do what's right? Or would you stay quiet, waiting for someone else to step forward? Let us know in the comments, because your voice matters here. And if this story moved you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that one person can make a difference. We tell stories not just to entertain, but to awaken, to honor those who dare to speak when silence is safer, to shine a light where power tried to hide in shadows. Because when injustice laughs, someone must stand. And when they do, we'll be here, telling their story. This is KaYi, where stories become justice.